Welcome, welcome. Jamie Hernandez here. We are in Soul Healing for the Empathic Entrepreneur. And today is about how your menstrual cycle affects your workflow. And, I always talk about how empathic healers, sensitive coaches, people in transformation, we are feelers. We live the world through feeling. And so because our menstrual cycle affects us, all of us know that who have a menstrual cycle. And I think it's important to understand as well, like even if you don't have a menstrual cycle, how this affects your team, your teammates. And so if we understand that our menstrual cycle literally on a weekly basis changes our physiology, which means like we literally have a different chemical makeup. We literally have a different functioning of our brain. We literally have a different body every week. And that body is, is receiving and interacting with the world differently. So phase number one is the menstrual phase, 1 to 7 days. This phase is when we're bleeding, right? And if you're still bleeding, that's a lot, right? To be bleeding for 1 to 7 days, that's a lot. And so what happens is our energy starts to get lower. And then what happens also as well, if we want to relate it to our workflow, this is very often where it is not the time for implementation. It's not the time to do deep creative work. It's not the time to kind of take big action or go out there into the world. It's a time of reflection. It is a time to slow down. And it is a time to allow answers to come to you, because as an entrepreneur, as a person in your life, you're constantly solving problems. You're constantly creating and solving problems. So I remember, I think like it was the night right before before I started bleeding. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and my assistant usually she sends me like copy that I need to edit, and my mind was completely blank. And so here's where you also want to lean on your support. And I knew that. I'm like, okay, nothing is coming out of this brain right now. So I allowed her to just like, okay, you do the editing, you post, what you need to do and do your thing, right? And so if we understand this, then we can get the proper support, because what we tend to do, which is very natural as a human being, is we misdiagnose ourselves. Like, let's say whatever we want to do something, and maybe we misdiagnose it as being lazy or not creative or just like useless. Like there's all of these kind of egoic structures that happen in our mind that we don't even realize, especially when we're creating a life. As an entrepreneur, we can get really harsh with ourselves, especially when we know we have big dreams, we have big goals, and we want to move our business forward. But some days, moving our business forward really just means resting in a meditative state. And when we rest in a meditative state, what happens is that the answers come to us. Right? So it doesn't mean just because you're being quiet and you're taking care of your body and you're doing things that nurture you and you're allowing your body to relax and you're gaining more rest and you're eating really well, that nothing is happening in your life, in your business. Actually, it's like that's where, the seed is being cultivated. So it's a great time if we do rest, right? Because if we don't rest, then it's very hard to receive information. But if we do allow ourselves to relax and be in a resting state, then the channel opens and we start to receive information. So that's a great time to journal, a great time to like, okay, if you are contemplating your business, to write things down. Because the next phase is the follicular phase, which is the day 1 to 14 of the month, right? And your estrogen levels rise. And typically, this is great for when you want to do more demanding tasks. So this is the time when if you're trying to do something creative, this is the time not to be necessarily in a planning phase, but like, let's say, for example, you need to write something creative or you need to create something that's creative. It is a time to actually do the thing, right? So this is a great time, like let's say if you are like needing to write something for your business, you need to create something for your business, you create like marketing or graphics or things like that, or your team does. It's a great time to be in that creative process and produce. And guess what? The menstrual cycle, it supports this part of the journey, right? It supports this. So if we have rested in the menstrual phase and we allowed ourselves to do things that help clear the mind and rest the body and journal and allow ourselves just to kind of document the things that come if they do, right? Then it supports the creative phase, so that in the creative phase, you're not just kind of like manic manifesting and doing things, because we've all been there as well. Like as an entrepreneur, we are in that resting phase where we didn't do anything, right? Like that time, a couple of weeks ago when I couldn't, like my brain literally could not function. And then we can overcompensate, right? By not necessarily going from a place of clarity, but going from a place of panic. So we want to learn, right? And this is what I do with all of our clients. We want to learn how to master our energy. And when we do implement from a place of clarity. And so when you're in the menstrual phase, it's a great time to rest and not necessarily search for the answers, but let them come to you. Because very often, if you do rest, right when you get into the follicular phase, it's very often that you're going to have those, those creative downloads. And that's the time to kind of implement them and put them out there. And anything that you've been working on, it's a great time to sort of, work on those things and promote anything that needs to be promoted. Day 14, the ovulation phase. Estrogen levels, and this is super important for us to understand, estrogen levels are at their peak. And this is a really great time if in terms of your actual physical activities. This is a great time to do high intensity workouts. This is a great time to do high intensity work. This is a great time to have conversations, right? Any kind of conversations you want to have with your team, like any kind of visionary conversations you want to have with your team, or even conversations that are more difficult, is a great time, because we're usually pretty, our like chemical balance is usually pretty clear. And this is a great time to network. This is a great time to be out. And if you're in partnership, in a relationship, this is a great time for a date night, right? Because all of that energy, and there's a certain, if you're observant of those who are still in their menstrual cycle, you often can tell when they're in ovulation, because there's a sensuality to them, right? So it's a great time, and we become very like kind of magnetic. So if we are trying to pitch an idea to somebody, or if we are reaching out to a mentor, if we are trying to lead our team and get them on track in our vision, the ovulation phase is really great. I'm going to talk also about I'll talk about, something else too that's important, because when we have these peaks and these dips, it does affect our body. Everyone has a different maybe symptom, but for me, I get headaches. Like if I don't balance out my estrogen and progesterone levels, I get headaches, and my energies, it goes up and down. So I'm going to talk about my little trick about that. But let me just go for the last phase, the luteal phase. And the luteal phase is days 15 to 28. Progesterone levels are on the rise, which means that that's when you are going to start to feel a decrease in energy and a little bit more sensitive to stress, right? And this is a good time to focus on details. Okay, so it's like the menstrual phase was sort of like just meditative, and you kind of let things come to you in your business and your life. And then the follicular phase is like the creative phase, and then the ovulation phase is really like, okay, if we have things that are complete, it's great to put it out there. It's great to start to promote. It's great to network. It's great to talk to your team about your vision. It's great to talk to other people. It's just, if we want to kind of speak to other humans, it's a great time. And it's also a great time to be social. It's a great time to be dating. It's a great time to do more higher intense activities. And so the luteal phase, sometimes it's like, if you're working on a project, you're like, for me, it's like I've been working on a project and I have all of these different components, but a lot of them kind of have all of these kind of like loose ends that sort of just need to, they need to kind of be finished. Like, you're closing the loop. So the luteal phase is really great for those details. It's like, oh, okay, so on my website, I need to add like, this link, and I need to change this detail, and I needed to, add this information. So all of these like little details, or any kind of, details in the planning of your life, that's great too. So you'll see that the cycle, they all support each other. Okay. So this is a great time. And then the luteal phase is also a great time for organization, right? So if we, for example, we know we have big things coming up, and because the follicular phase is a great time to sort of like implement things and do things. The luteal phase is really great for organizing, right? So it's like, it's a really good time to take out your agenda. It's a really good time to see like, okay, Monday I'm doing this, and time block. And that's one of the things I teach our clients. It's like, okay, if you have 3 main goals, right? And we want to really look at, okay, so what did I do? What did I do last week to support these goals? And what am I going to do next week to support these goals? So I think it's really important to have like, what's the name of that author? But anyway, it's called The Road Less Stupid. And there's another book, business book, Traction, I think it's called Traction. And they talk about having thinking time, because we can't constantly just be in the doing, like in the follicular phase and the ovulation phase. We have to like have time to organize ourselves, right? Because we don't want to like manic manifest and manic implementation just because something needs to get out there. Sometimes we go a little too far ahead, and we don't necessarily spend the time and organize yourself and and look at our day, look at our week, look at our months, look at our quarters. So this is I know this is a very typical thing in business, but I don't know if necessarily healers and coaches and people in transformational space necessarily look at their business from a day-to-day, like, what am I doing from whatever, this hour to this hour, that way, and also looking at what's going on in the week, and also looking at your quarters, right? Your quarters of your financial year. So it's like January, February, March can be considered like a quarter. So what happens in the organization is that we can start to look at, okay, if there are certain things that I know, right? Because in the thinking time, in this follicular phase, in the organization phase, it is a time to also look at what's working, continue to place those in our agenda on a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis, and a yearly basis, right? And it is important to look at what's working and what's not working, and also to look at the data, because empaths can be very emotional. Sometimes, let's say we go through a quarter, And hello, beautiful, right? We go through a quarter and or go through a year, and we look at our finances, and we're like, oh, we may not be completely satisfied. But if we look at the data and we understand like what are the profit generating activities, and we look, okay, and we see, we actually look and we measure like what have we done. If, for example, sometimes life happens. Maybe, it's like I've in this past week, I've gone to two funerals. So it is a time of grief, and in the beginning of January, I was having some health issues. So if we look at our quarters and we kind of just look at the data and see, ooh, okay, I just wasn't available to do those profit generating activities, or I didn't maybe plan or organize enough with my team to do that, then we can see why the cash flow dipped. And, there are other components like what's happening in the market, or, inflation and all these things. But it's like, then we can get less emotional about when we're in that organization phase, and when we're in that luteal phase, we can just look at data and just take it as it is and understand, oh, okay, that's why this quarter was more quiet, or that's why this year, sometimes we're in life, right? And we're maybe in the healing process, or a transition, or a divorce, or some kind of life change, and that can last a long time, right? So we can be less, have that egoic structure be less kind of harsh on us, and just understand, okay, let me look at the data. Okay, that's why, cash flow was, down. And, ooh, there was a time where I was really kind of on fire. Ooh, and that's why the cash flow was up. And again, there's many more components and variables, but at least now we're looking in the organization part of it, in the luteal phase, at really like just what's happening in our business from a very objective standpoint. Because again, empaths tend to be very emotional and feel everything and want everything, and be from the heart, and feel in the body, and feel. And this is kind of what happens, where we don't necessarily think like we're doing anything, but then we get like sad or disappointed when we, let's say, launch something or do something, and it doesn't generate the results that we want. Instead of just looking at the data, instead of looking at what's working and what's not working, we sort of spiral into this kind of shame, blame, chain kind of spiral. And so this can really help, right? In the luteal phase, just this organization, this planning, this just understanding. And so in our practice, in our spiritual practice, the menstrual phase is really that like meditative phase. Whatever meditation means for you, maybe that's running, maybe that's kickboxing, whatever brings you into a flow state. Because one beautiful thing, I don't know if you guys notice this, if you're still in your menstrual cycle, it's like one beautiful thing that happens when you are in your menstrual phase and you're just more fatigued is there's also a sensitivity that arises. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's like a sensitivity that arises, and it's a place that we're more raw and more vulnerable. It's a place that usually our all of the shit that we're dealing with, all of the patterns that are not necessarily supporting us, all of the emotional things that are happening, they come up, right? So it's a really important time to tend to those, and it's an opportunity, because it's a very in our menstrual phase, before and during our menstrual phase, it is a time where life can be more triggering and people can be more triggering. And here's the thing, it's not that the person is triggering, it's that it is triggering something within us. It is triggering a core, what I call core wound within us. And it's giving us the opportunity to show like, ooh, this is coming up again. Because I guarantee you, every month around your menstrual cycle, you will have a point of view or perception, or you will be triggered by life in a very similar pattern. And this is why it's important to observe, okay? Because we will misdiagnose it and just think it's the, it's the effing world that like sucks at all this stuff, and men are like this, and work is like this, and life is like this, and the world is like this, and the city is like this, and the weather is like this. When really, when we have a core wounding, the core wounding kind of creates this lens. It's almost like we're wearing these glasses, and we perceive the world through that lens, not realizing that we're actually wearing lenses. And the lens, that it might give you a hint, the lens that you're seeing through is often a sense of, I'm not enough. Could be that. So just listen to these and see which one resonates with you. I'm not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough people. There's not enough money. I don't have enough skills. Whatever. I'm not worthy, right? I'm not worth investing in myself, or it's not worth this or that. Like there's this unworthy, right? I am not capable, right? We think we can't do it. We don't have enough skill or certifications. I don't belong. Oh, this one is really painful, because those who don't belong are constantly trying to find a place of belonging, but because their lens of perception has that unknowingly, so it's an unconscious thing, has that egoic structure will always find the reason why they don't belong. So they kind of jump from friend to friend to friend, or group to group, or activity to activity to activity. And it's very painful, because they don't necessarily realize, right? And they're always finding maybe a new spiritual group, or a new spiritual practice, or a new hobby, or new friends. And they're constantly thinking it is because of, or seeing it's because of their external group or environment. And so they spend a long time in their lifetime like jumping and jumping and jumping. So I don't belong is one of those that it manifests that way. I am not perfect. I am not perfect. From a business point of view, is like we all have this, but like we're creating a website, but until it's like perfect or has a perfect pictures, or we want to create our Instagram bio or whatever, it's like until it's perfect, I will not go forth. So you're always kind of finding a reason why there's something wrong with it. Something needs to, we need to improve it. We need to perfect it. And it's like, until it's this, then I can do it. And that's also really painful, because for empaths, one of the ways that shows up is in your health. So because we kind of become often very, very interested and involved in our own kind of well-being and wellness and spiritual growth and health, the egoic structure of I'm not perfect can get us into this really self-absorbed place where we're constantly healing. We're constantly like, if it's not like my elbow, then it's my toe. And if it's not my toe, it's my nose. And if it's not my nose, it's my eye. Like there's something that is always needing to be healed, needing to be fixed, and that's from like symptomatic of somebody who is, I'm not perfect. Again, there's more examples, but I'm not perfect. So I'm not enough. Like I don't have enough time. It's just like there's not enough, people. There's not enough, who want what I want, what I'm selling, or who I am. Like there's that not enough. I'm not worthy. So we don't necessarily. The symptom of that is that we don't necessarily invest in ourselves in the way that we feel like we really truly want. So it's like a symptom can be we kind of do the people pleasing thing, where we really know we want to do this, but then we kind of invest in something else that maybe somebody else is suggesting to us. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I don't belong. I'm not capable. that is something like you're constantly trying to getting the next certification, getting the next healing thing, getting the next therapist. Like there's a constant, like you're, what I call it, you're constantly in the healing loop. So we're trying to fill that void of not being capable. I'm not perfect. And oh, the last one is I'm not significant. So sometimes we have a lot to say, right? We have a lot to say, but we don't necessarily feel like what I have to say is important. So that's how that manifests. So then we just maybe don't try. Okay. So the menstrual phase can really allow us the opportunity every single month for those who are still, bleeding, to see these egoic structures, see these core wounds arise, and see them, versus like, oh, like the typical, like, oh, I'm just PMSing, or oh, I'm, like we have all of these kind of these narratives that are not helpful. But if we understand, wow, that's really a time like where life is very triggering. People are not triggering. There are things that are triggering. Okay, so don't confuse the outside world with your internal world, right? When you're menstruating and you're bleeding, that's a physiological, that's an emotional, that's a chemical, that's something happening from within. And that cocktail allows us to really see our deeper wounds, And if we're ready for it, then we can begin to look at that, right? And that's a big part of the work that I do with our clients is like, okay, when there's that readiness, we begin to look at that. And in the follicular phase, that's go time. That's like, okay, you want to implement? Let's do it. Like, that's the time, like, and here's where sometimes in the follicular and ovulation phase, we can get confused, and maybe we go and we do things like we go into over organization. That's like sometimes we use the energy to overthink, or we put it in an activity. Like, we have a lot of energy, but we put it in an activity that is not matching our goals, right? And I do this with all our clients. Like, what are your top 3 goals in your health, in your wealth and business, and in your relationships? Meaning relationships with yourself, relationships with other people, relationships to whatever spiritual practice you have, to life, to God, to universe, whatever you want to call it, relationships. And what happens is sometimes we start putting it in, because we have a lot of energy. We put it in activities that don't really, let's say, serve our business. So maybe all of a sudden we're like, we have so much energy, so we're going to clean the whole house. Like, guilty, right? Like, and in the luteal phase, I'm going to organize my whole like shoe closet. Fine, that's okay. I'm not saying never to do that. But when you're running a business, it can be a really great distraction and a really great way to waste your productive hours. And the whole thing, what we have to understand as an entrepreneur is that it's never about a one-man show. And so if you are going to expand, if you're going to grow, you need support. You need support in your core healing, your core wound healing. You need support in your business. You need support maybe like in your like just day-to-day life, right? Cooking, cleaning, whatever it is. And so you need support in your finances. So it's important to understand, if we are going to grow and evolve and continue to achieve what we want to achieve, we have to understand that we need support, right? And so sometimes in each of these phases, we misdiagnose that, from those egoic structures, why we're not capable. But no, if you think about any life or any person or any business who is living it from a very fulfilled place, they have support. And that's, I think, a big kind of mindset shift that is important in the empathic sensitive community, because okay, menstrual phase. Okay, it kind of disconnected for a second. The menstrual phase, that's a time of meditation, letting the answers come to you. And then when the follicular phase hits, that's a great time to do implementation and creative work. If you have like kind of something you're really trying to work out, like a lot of our clients, you know, this is a great time to figure out the outline of your program, to figure out the title of your book or your program, or, you know, figure out who are your ideal clients. Like, this is a great time for that. The ovulation phase, really great time to be out there and speak to people, speak to your team. If you're hiring people, it's a great time. If you're needing to talk to your mentor, it's a great time. If you're needing to speak about your business to other people, it's a great time. If you need to pitch an idea, it's a great time. So it's a great time for networking. It's a great time for high intensity workout. It's a great time for socialization. It's a great time to have fun, right? It's a great time for dating. It's a great time to do what you love, because you have that energy. And then the last is a luteal, which I went into a lot, which is that organizational phase. What's working, what's not working. So I hope that's helpful, because then now we can plan and organize and not have this emotional kind of abuse that we have with ourselves when we're not necessarily in literally the state of being that we want to be in order to achieve what we want to achieve. Now it becomes more obvious of when to do what, right? And then it becomes less of these emotional spirals or overwhelms. And then we can kind of look at our day, look at our week, look at our month, look at our year in a way that we can gather data. My last bonus tip is, one thing that I do is there's so many things. One, you must, this information is not information. I'm not an expert on this, but Elisa Vitti is the expert on this, and this is where I learned this, and it was such a revelation. Her first book was called Women Code, and in that she talks about every single phase and what foods that we can eat, so that, you know, when we have the high estrogen levels and then we dip, and then we have the progesterone levels on the rise and we dip, because that's usually when you're going to have symptoms, what to eat so that it's more of a flow. So I recommend Elisa Vitti, and it can feel overwhelming to feel like because she has a whole recommendation of so many things. But if you just change one thing, like one of the things I change is I do pumpkin seeds and I do sunflower seeds. One half of the month and the second half of the month is sunflower seeds, and that has taken away the drastic headaches that I always get whenever my estrogen level goes up and goes down, or my progesterone level goes up and goes down. I mean, that in itself, wow, you know, that, and it's such a simple thing. So I highly recommend her book, Women Code, and she has a new, her latest version, it's called In Flow, and both of them really start to lay out and understand our women's physiology, because historically what she says in the book is most of health study groups and information are based on the male physiology, and very different, right? Our physiology is very different, and so if we're trying to operate in the same, what she calls infradian cycle as a man, it's not necessarily going to work, because it's different. So this information has literally changed my life in terms of really understanding myself from a weekly to weekly basis, and created a lot more tenderness and space for the physiological changes I'm going through, and gave me the opportunity to, in my business, make informed decisions of how I plan my month and as well as how I plan the way I eat. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you have any questions. If there's any big takeaways, I want to hear you. Let me know if you are here on the replay, #replay, or live, #live. And I promise I'm going to answer all your questions. Now, one thing, this is a kind of very specific topic today, but as I continue to mention, one of the things that I do is we work with empathic entrepreneurs, and what I call is like we work in the spiritual house first before we implement in the business house. And in the spiritual house, what we consider is our body temple, our physical body. We consider the way the mind works, and we consider the way our energy works. And we consider all of the deep core wounding that, again, has that lens of perception that you may have when you're moving forward, right? If you want to kind of launch a new business, or like launch a new product, or change your ideal client, or raise your prices, all of our core wounding is going to affect our decisions. And once we understand how to free up energy bit by bit through the body, mind, and energy, then we can take that energy and we can implement it and strategize in your business. And not just strategize, but actually take action. And then what happens is you have also an accountability container. So this year I've created something, an additional, I've extended the program where the program was much shorter. It was 8 modules, and now I've created it to be 12 modules over 1 year. And I've also added a somatic practice. So there's deep, in-depth coaching for our healing and for our business, but there is also a somatic practice, and I do that twice a week. So the program has extended to a year, which it used to be only a couple months, and we're doing the deep dive healing, and also there's a bi-weekly somatic component, so that we can learn how to process our emotions. We can also have a place to stay anchored in our bodies and take care of the body, take care of the body temple, and have a place to unload. Because when we are overloaded, it's very hard, it's very difficult to just manage and function in the world. Okay? So if you are interested in that, let me know, Jamie, I'm ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. And on that call, we are going to right away get into it. And we're going to look at what's stopping you physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And we're going to look at, where you're going. What do you want, right? And what's stopping you, and how can we get there together, right? Through, and then I'll speak to you about the deep dive program that I offer. The new program is called Awakening the Soul Entrepreneur, and I'll be launching it soon. So let me know if you are interested in a breakthrough call, a discovery call, and on that call, I'm going to take in your application, and in that application, I'm already going to start to look at maybe what lenses are there, and we're going to get into the work. So you can DM me, or you can look in the comments for my Calendly link. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. I hope this was helpful. I will see you all next week. Bye, guys.